Hey Jim, how you doing?
Good. How's it going?
I'm all right. So far, it's just you and me.
Sounds good.
Have you heard from Jason the last hour or so?
I have not.
Okay. Well, let's hope he shows up. Um, hey, there's Graham. How you doing, Graham?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Wow, you like the voice of God, man.
Well, okay. I'm gonna have to mess with the settings here.
No, I got a mixing room here. I can do that. I just usually I expect that kind of voice to tell me to build a boat. All right, can you try talking now, Jim? Sorry, Graham.
All right. Talking. 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Test.
Jim is good. Graham, can you talk?
Yeah, I can talk.
All right, perfect. You are more modulated now. That is great. How is my voice for you guys? Can you hear it okay?
Yeah, very clear.
Okay, cool. There's a dog in the background, and there's a small child watching Daniel Tiger in the next room, but hopefully neither of those things will interfere too much. So we're waiting for Jason.
All right.
So what do you guys think about the last half of the Defenders?
It was okay. Yeah, I don't. I may not have had a chance to do a lot of thinking about this before I've come in. I don't know. It's I've been not terribly excited about most of the hand stuff in the Netflix franchise. Iron Fist and Defenders were all hand all the time, and so was Daredevil season 2. So, I think that the writing frequently starts to get weaker as soon as they start getting into the sort of Orientalist villain thing. I thought this was actually the best handling of the hand. The whole building thing the blowing up the building thing didn't work for me. I didn't think they really made it, came up with a very good, compelling reason for needing to do that. Mostly they just needed to get rid of the bad guys, not a building. So, yeah. Hey, Jason.
Hey, Jason.
I'm sorry about the delay. I have not live streamed so often that I know how to do it without trying to puzzle over it like a 49-year-old old dude, right? So I was like trying to figure out how to get it to run, and I couldn't figure it out. And Mike fortunately came to our rescue. So.
Oh, it's cool, man. I usually have to Google the fact on it myself, so it's I was going down a rabbit hole of downloading encoders, and I was like, wait, I can just do a live event, not to mess with any of that. So
that's exactly I was like, wait a minute, an encoder. I didn't need an encoder last time. What do I do? So,
yeah, that's for a different kind of light, and that's for like if you're playing a video game, you want them to to be able to see what you're doing in high res.
Yeah.
So, all right. Sounds like Graham and I have the same opinions about the show. So, since we're in agreement, I think we can just, call it. And,
it's unanimous as long as nobody else speaks up.
Yeah, there's nothing else to say about that. The hand kind of sucked, and yeah. All right. Well, hey. So, you guys good to go? I mean, we're already broadcasting, but we can just go ahead and do the intro, and then we'll officially be in the show.
Let James and Gray introduce themselves because new listeners will not have known them from last episode. Gray, I'm going to have you back to talk about Daredevil.
Okay.
I remember your observation about how the binge watching long form had changed the way that you could write in Daredevil, and I remember your example of that long conversation between Karen and her Spanish landlady.
Neighbor, yeah.
So I've never forgotten that. So when I go back and start rewatching Daredevil, I'm going to ask you to do the same if you can and join us on the show.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah.
Okay. Just fair warning, it's not going to be right away, but soon. Jim, you're like going to be my regular guest on this thing. I hope you get used to it.
I'll be your Huckleberry.
Okay. My Huckleberry.
All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 14. Hey folks, thanks for tuning into the Band Pot. Start over. Hey, folks, thanks for tuning into Hallway Fights, our new podcast reviewing the Netflix Marvel shows and various other superhero media, brought to you by the BAMF Podcast. Here with us today, we've got a bunch of fellows to talk about the second half of the Defenders show on Netflix. Just wanted to direct you to episode 1. You can find here on our YouTube channel, or hopefully we'll be up on iTunes in a couple of days, and you can just look above number 2, and hey, there it is. We have a couple of folks who weren't with us last time. Graham Scott, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Name is Graham Scott. I'm an occasional, my day job is college faculty, and my night job is writing about geek-related stuff. So.
And where can they find your writing if they're curious?
I've got a short science fiction story in Nature. I've got an adventure in Dungeon Magazine if anybody can dig through deeply enough to get into 2001 issues. And
that short story of yours in Nature is really great, and it takes like
thanks.
3. So everybody should
Thank
go
you.
read it. Where can they find you?
Actually, you can just Google it. My name, Graham Robert Scott, Nature Futures, and the title is Cold Comforts. But
Maybe we can put a link to that in our show notes if I can remember to add that.
and I'm working on a number of other things, including some other projects with Jason and Mike that have been tabled for far too long. Anyway, so most of my writing lately has been scholarly, so it's been taken up a lot of time.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming out today, Graham.
Sure.
Next up, we have Mr. Jim Sales. Jim, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I've been on a couple of these different BAMF podcasts. I just sort of like show up like random crew member number 7. My day job is
Okay, you have a name.
am I the guy who dies on the planet?
Here's a red shirt.
Yeah, my day job is instructional support. So we got academia represented strong, and my night job is struggling writer.
Cool. My night job is frustrated writer and stand-up comedian, so I feel your angst. Thanks for coming back, Jim, a.k.a. crew member number 7. And last but not least is Jason Tondro, who was the host of our first episode of Hallway Fights. Jason, can you want to give yourself a quick bio?
Yeah, I'm going to be here with Mike, like kind of most of the time. We're kind of co-hosts on this. Mike wrote to me about a couple of weeks ago and said, hey, I want to do another podcast, maybe talking about Netflix. And I was like, I am so in. So, like, sign me up. You're not going to be able to make me not come to an episode. So I'm going to force myself onto co-host role. So I write and blog as Dr. Comics. I write and teach comics and superhero studies at the College of Coastal Georgia. I've taught courses on the superhero narrative, taught superhero film and television, and I've got various articles on superhero stuff published, both academic sense and and in the geek press. And I've written a bunch of role-playing supplements, kind of superhero based, like the Field Guide to Superheroes and the Supervillain Handbook. So I do kind of a lot of analytical stuff about the superhero genre and kind of archetypes and tropes and kind of how they function. But that's not what I want to talk about today. That's not what got the Defenders onto me. But
yeah, and let me just do a quick. I'm the one guy in this podcast who probably doesn't have a postgraduate degree. I'm Mike Lafferty, host of the long-running BAMF podcast, which is focused on comics and superhero RPGs mainly, although sometimes we venture further afield. I run an RPG publishing company, and I think I'm funny. I'm in therapy for that, but it's a work in progress. So, and yeah.
Mike, do not sell yourself short. Like I've talked to you before, but I just want to note, like, you help so many people get their shit published, like get their role-playing game and superhero and fantasy stuff out there. And it's just really, really great what you do. And so, an unsung hero.
After this podcast, could you make a phone call to my parole officer, let him know about all that? I could go a long way next hearing. But
You bet.
All right, so focus up. Talking about the Defenders, second half of the season. Graham and I were talking a little bit before the episode started, and we were both kind of disappointed with the hand in Netflix. they haven't really sung as a villain for me. It's kind of like ninjas with organized crime. Well, okay. And I thought, was it episode 6 where Elektra kills Alexandra? And
Yeah, I think so.
Around there, yeah.
Yeah,
she
around 6.
doesn't really do anything after. I mean, it's, hey, I'm running the hand now, and nothing really changes except that Sigourney Weaver isn't on set, which makes things less interesting because
Yeah, she was the best part.
yeah. So I don't know. Graham, did the show still work for you, even with the hand kind of being a lackluster villain?
I think this, as I said before, I think this is the best handling I've seen of the hand in the Netflix franchise, but that isn't necessarily saying a lot for me. I thought I like the Punisher aspects of Daredevil season 2, but a lot of the hand stuff with a lot of the black pajama ninjas running all over the buildings. I think part of the issue is that the franchise as a whole is at its best when it kind of recognizes what was silly or of a period in their old in the originating materials, and they update it for more modern sensibilities and more dramatic forms. And they're at their strongest, I think, when they recognize that, like, Iron Fist is appropriating a Chinese artifact and running to New York with it, and that and if the so I guess whenever they're doing the hand stuff and they start getting into a lot of the Orientalist tropes, it immediately just feels like a wholly different show to me, and it doesn't feel like the sort of updated, rebooted kind of thing that they're doing with a lot of the other characters. So
yeah, I would agree. I would agree. The way they kept cutting off the leaders of the hands' heads,
yeah.
I don't think they're trying to make a Highlander joke. I really don't.
Yeah.
Nobody would get it except for old people like us.
Yeah, in the end, there could be only 5, I guess. Anyway,
I want to diplomatically disagree with only one particular statement that you made there, Greg,
Sure.
and that you were saying that you felt like this had sort of dealt with the hand best of all the shows. I want to rewind a little bit because I remember the very first season of Daredevil.
Yeah.
And when Madame Gao showed up and she had like the whole cocaine factory where she had blinded everyone.
Yeah. That was good.
That was freaky. Like
I'm going to agree with you there, except I think that Daredevil season 1 handled the hand the best by minimizing it the most.
Well, there was
they backgrounded all of it, and the seasons are generally as strong as their villains are, and so the Daredevil season 1 very strong villain. The handling of Kingpin I thought was really engrossing, and like if you compare that to say the season for Luke Cage, where I thought Cottonmouth was a pretty good villain, but then like halfway through the season they kind of switch villains on us, and they go to Diamondback, who's just not nearly as interesting to me. And I thought in this case they kind of went the other, like I thought the Sigourney Weaver villain Alexandra was far more compelling than some of the other ones were. They'd kind of developed her in the same way that they developed Kingpin, developed a villain that you kind of can sympathize with while also realizing that they are figures of bread. And that's a neat trick to be able to pull off, and they don't get to do that very often. But I don't know. I don't find the hand, when it's presented as a monolithic organization, to be a very compelling villain.
Well,
particularly when you compare it to like the Jessica Jones villain or to Kingpin. So
the hand is supposed to be mysterious,
yeah.
And the more we learn about them, the less threatening and scary they become. They're a horror bad guy, and we've all either run or played a lot of horror adventures over the many years, and we know that the more the players understand the bad guy, the less scary he is, right? Whether it's knowing their game stats or knowing where the character's origin is, or in the case of the hand, like what's up with those guys. I remember when Gao was walking around and everyone was like afraid to fight her, and she didn't fight anybody. And even the Kingpin was afraid of Madame Gao. And now she's just a woman with like a cone area effect attack, And,
Right. Just control it.
Yeah, and it takes all the coolness out of her.
Yeah.
Jim, we're talking over you.
Oh, that's all right. I'm going to be the voice of dissent
Good.
because I loved it.
Yeah.
Unabashedly. Except I do have like quibbles. I have nitpicks. And I'm going to proceed to pick those nits.
I enjoyed it too. I was disagreeing with Gray on that one issue, but I actually I liked it. And the hand to me were like mooks to be mowed down by our heroes. And scenes in which the heroes mowed down mooks, I was very happy with. I didn't need the hand.
I like those scenes, yeah.
Yeah. Those a couple things about let's compare Defenders to Avengers, right? I think that's a fair comparison.
Yes, totally.
So every time in the Avengers movies, in the last two that we have, now the new one, this is being recorded before 3 and 4 hit, so I have no idea if this is going to hold true for that.
Yeah.
But I suspect it will, because there's so much money tied up with those films.
Yes.
The Avengers movies, they're just like big, giant popcorn events that don't really change the characters. Like, they're not fundamentally different.
There's attempts in the films to make those changes. Some of them stick better than others. Right?
Yeah, and I think also, so those that sort of substantive thing, I think the Defenders has the one up on it in the sense of, I feel that it's required watching for, depending on where they go, it feels at this moment in time required watching for every subsequent season. So if you were just a Luke Cage fan, you got a whole Luke Cage arc going from, don't use the H word around me to becoming the hero, the guy who's, the most person standing on the high ground saying, no, we're not going to blow up buildings. That's not what you do.
I want to talk about that scene in a minute. So
okay.
Please.
And then you have, Matt Murdock, and, he's in a weird situation. I really hate the last 30 seconds of Defenders.
Oh, really?
I wanted the to be continued feel.
You didn't get it when it sets up Born Again?
I got that it sets up Born Again, but I just didn't want to know that they were going in that direction.
Oh, you wanted his fate to be completely unknown.
I wanted the last shot to be Iron Fist with lighting up his hand. Like he's fully decided he's going to be this hero of this city.
Yeah.
Yes, or put the Matt Murdock thing at the end of the credits. Take out the Punisher trailer and put the Matt Murdock thing there, so that my last remaining image is that. The other thing I think is every one of these team up films, they give you this giant, awesome moment, right? Those that clashing of heroes in Civil War. There is Avengers 2 has like 2 or 3 of them with the team doing the George Perez swipe on the cover, and fighting the Ultron robots. Fundamentally, those are just giant cartoons. They're just giant digital effect things. Defenders gives us that moment, but it's actually people throwing each other around. Yeah. And it felt more realistic to me because it was so grounded to the extent where it was literally underground.
So for those of you guys that are remembering Avengers, there's that classic Avengers moment when they're fighting off all the aliens and the camera does a 360.
Yeah.
And that follows a previous sequence in which we sort of go from one hero to the next, kind of slowly building up the team, and we follow Hawkeye's arrow and everybody sort of all comes together. And then there's this scene in the last episode of Defenders when we do like the 360 camera angle and we see all the characters fighting, except they go around twice, right?
Yeah.
It's a double 360. Well, that's because it's 8 hours instead of 2, so we have to like double up. I saw a lot of like, we got to one-up Avengers in this series. Sort of, well, let's do all the stuff Avengers does, but let's do it on a budget and twice as good.
I love the fact that Luke Cage throughout that sequence was just standing tall and throwing people around, like not even necessarily throwing punches, but just like grabs some guy and then throws him up, and the camera moves away, and then he grabs some other guy and throws him into another wall.
Yeah,
I thought that was just great. Oh, also, I know we're also like down on the ninjas, but ninjas fighting on elevators, awesome.
I like the ninjas on elevators. That was fun.
I was like, those so much video game potential in this 30 seconds.
That's true. Yeah. No, you're right. Actually, that you mentioned it. If we don't have a Defenders video game, that would be. I would love to play in that game.
All right.
Just to clarify, my issue is with the Hand as the primary character villains.
Yes.
Hand as mooks is, as long as they're not wearing the black pajamas, which I found really sort of overly cliched in Daredevil season 2. Anything other than that would be fine. And this one, they didn't really do the black pajama thing. They kind of pitched that part of the costume, and I was happier with that.
Yeah, like the guy that was Colleen Wing's mentor.
Yeah.
He's a block of wood to me. Like I have zero interest in that character. I know they're trying to make him really charming. And I'm like, you're like this bullshit nobody. Like, why am I even watching you? What I really wanted, for example, Bakudo is I wanted the scene where Elektra kicks all of their asses to prove that she should be in charge, right?
Yeah, that would have been nice.
Yeah, something like that.
That would have been nice.
But let's go back to that Luke Cage moment that you were talking about.
The building.
Yeah, where and the reason why I want to bring it up is I was. Go ahead, Gray.
No, I just I really thought that they never really justified blowing up the building instead of just going after the bad guys in it. Now, if they wanted to blow up the thing at the bottom at the pit, they could have blown up the thing in the bottom without bringing down the entire building. I think it was just there so they could have something to argue about.
Yeah, well, and that I think you might have something there because so in the first 4 episodes that I watched with Jim, we talked about last week, I was really struck by the way that each character in sequence kind of joins the team one episode at a time. And I can see the writer's room when they decide, okay, we got 8 hours to fill. How are we going to fill 8 hours and make it not drag? And from what I can see, I'm reverse engineering the writer's room here.
Yeah.
They decided, okay, let's set up some basic problems and let's move each character through this problem in turn. And because the audience is always kind of watching somebody else run the race, they always have something to watch, but it's always different, and we never lose them. Like the audience keeps the plot. In the second 4 episodes, that challenge was the 3 versus 1 scene, where 3 members of the team agree on a plan of action, and 1 member of the team does not. And this allows us to figure out when that one character who does not responds to being outnumbered, how do they act? And this, to the writers, I think, is a kind of true testament of character. What does that one person do when the screws are tightened as tight as possible? And if you count in order, Jessica Jones walks out because that's her basic move, right? Like, I don't want to deal with this. Bye. Iron Fist picks a fight because he's a living weapon. And I love that moment when Colleen says, and he tells everyone that.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, no, this episode was sometimes at its strongest when it was owning Danny Rand.
Yeah.
It was just calling him on all problems.
Yeah. And the third is Luke Cage, who is the calm, rational guy that allows everyone else to persuade him around. He lets them talk him into it.
Yeah.
And then finally Matt, who martyrs himself and dies.
Right. Kind of.
You guys remember, was it Sherlock season 2, where they do Sherlock's faces off with Moriarty on top of the building? And
season 2. End of season 2.
Jumps to his death. And it's fairly well done. And then the last 3 seconds, you see Watson visiting the grave, tear trickling down his cheek, and there's Benedict Cumberbatch peeking out from behind a tree. Yeah. And you're kind of like, motherfuckers, couldn't you just give us a death scene?
I actually hate Sherlock to so I'm just like restraining all that bile that I have.
It's all cool, man. Let it flow. There are many valid criticisms of that show.
You're only going to offend our entire female audience.
But if you're going to criticize him,
I'm not saying anything, and I'm keeping a lockbox. And again, my objection to Sherlock as a show is on the basis of I don't think it's a good representation of the Holmes character, in terms of it doesn't set up the clue for the audience to be able to figure out the mystery along with Sherlock. And I think that's a problem in the writing's room.
Well, they do most of his mysteries in fucking montage form, so I would agree completely. I think Benedict Cumbersnatch is a very charismatic on-screen presence, so I'm happy to watch. I can't say his name. I gonna say Cumberbund next time, and I can't help it. It's a sickness, but yeah,
it's that comedy illness that you have.
Yes, exactly. But no, you were talking about the end where they're setting up Born Again, and I kind of wanted them to just not at the end say, hey guys, it's okay, Daredevil really made it. I kind of wanted just to let us have that beat where is he okay, what's going to happen, and then you find out in Daredevil season 3.
That scene where everybody walks back from the building and you see Foggy and Karen waiting and the door is empty. Yeah, that was good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because they didn't have anybody say, I'm sorry, Matt didn't make it.
Right.
Yeah.
They just let the visuals tell it, which is, I think, very gutsy for a writer.
That was actually really well handled.
Yeah,
that might have been the best scene of that episode, because
one of the best of the series.
They had kind of had a tendency to sort of explain the hell out of everything.
Yeah. But I can see why they would do that, because you've got 4 protagonists. Like you can't presume that the audience has watched every series of everybody, so I can kind of see their anxiety, or they felt like they had to explain it.
Yeah. I think the show does have a problem with exposition. The show never fully explains what the Black Sky is in relation to the other elements of the show that they spend so much time on.
Yeah.
And explaining.
As far as I can tell, the Black Sky is just a really kick-ass chick.
Yeah, and it was in season 2. It was a little Japanese boy that was in a container that Stick killed, right? Yeah. So I don't know. Like, is it supposed to be a supernatural threat? Is it supposed to hawk into Shadowland or Mephisto? Like, I don't understand why everyone was hung up on the MacGuffin, and then it just doesn't even become a MacGuffin because she's like, I'm not going to let that define me. Well, I don't know what the definition is.
I did like that. Right. That by the end of the episode, by the end of the show, we're not fighting the Black Sky. We're fighting Elektra.
Mm-hmm.
And she's totally owned that persona now. And she's like, you know what? I'm just evil. I'm just selfish and evil. So I was glad for that. But no, you're right. The Black Sky was always kind of this weird. I think that where did we first meet the Black Sky? Was it in Daredevil?
Daredevil 1.
1?
Yeah, season 1. Yeah.
We invent it, and I don't think the writers knew that they were going to bring it back in Defenders. I think it was like one of those plot things that we're just going to create, and then later they're like, well, let's pull that thing in, and they had to try to make it all kind of make sense.
Yeah.
Like the plot hole, the giant plot hole.
Yeah.
Which, it was introduced in episode 1 of Daredevil.
Yeah.
Because it was that scene with Nabu with the paperwork and the architect drawing. Can we just get to how awesome superhero fights are in this show? I know I'm sounding like that guy, but when I was on the couch by myself, I watched the last half of the show mostly to myself. And episode 6 starts, and I made sure I took my time with it. So, like, unlike the first half, which I binge watched, I watched it every few days. And it opens up, and it's Iron Fist against the team. It's that 1 versus 3 mentality.
Yeah.
And then everyone chimes into the fight sequence and does something that to me felt so comic booky in the best possible way. Like when Luke Cage tries to jump in and stop the fight and gets pushed aside, and then Jessica Jones tries to stop the fight and then finally has to just deck him at the end. Everyone's motivation was clearly outlined. It all made sense. Luke Cage was the calm, rational, let's take our time with this. And, Stick was like, let's just throw him in the box, kind of mentality. And I thought that was so well articulated in a way that I think some of the other Marvel properties sometimes falter with.
I was not too keen on the whole capture Iron Fist and both when the team did it, which I thought was just dumb. Like, but I guess the thing, they didn't want to fight him, but he was like, I'm not gonna hide, I'm gonna fight. And they were like, we don't want you out there. But that felt forced to me. Much like Gray, you were saying that the blowing up the building felt forced.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Those scenes were there because the writers wanted to show us heroes in conflict, not because it made sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, but on the other hand, I totally bought it when Stick was like, okay, I'm going to knock Luke Cage out with my ninja incense and just murder Iron Fist.
Yeah. They didn't earn their conflict in their internecine conflict. They didn't earn it every time. But they did with the Stick bit where he gasses Luke Cage. And that one, they earned it. But the warehouse fight with over Danny Rand, I kind of was ambivalent about that one. And they really lost me on the building one. I was like, no, you haven't actually convinced me at all as a viewer that the building needs to come down. It's a building.
But it's an evil building.
By bringing down the building, we're going to kill the Hand. Wasn't that their strategy?
Yeah, but that's a terrible. You never know where they are. They could be on the others. They could be in Kunlun. I mean, that's a terrible strategy. You don't know if they're. You can't even detect their heart rate half the time, so he doesn't know if they're in the building. Well, they had all kinds of little inaccuracy issues there, like where he says at the end of one episode that like they're the only ones in the building, and then the next episode they're constantly fighting mooks all over the building.
Yeah,
I had some issues with like apparently the one writer doesn't talk to the other or something.
Well, I think the very fact that Matt Murdock survives the building exploding shows the weakness of that as a strategy.
Right. Yeah,
I'll give you that. Yeah,
good point. Good point.
Good evidence to back up my claim. Thank you.
Glad to help, sir. Glad to help. So, comic scholars, help me out here. If Danny Rand was written as the martial artist he is in the Marvel comic books, because we can't call it the 616 anymore, shouldn't he have taken out Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Matt Murdock in that fight without much trouble?
Well, sure, but that's not the Iron Fist we're talking about.
That's not the character that we have.
We're looking at young Danny Rand who doesn't know anything about anything. Like he can't use the Iron Fist for anything except punching people. The only way he used it to negate hand poison was when a hand leader showed him how to do it. Right? And he has a hard time with like 5 or 6 guys.
Yeah.
Without using the fist. If he uses the fist, one of the things I love about the fist is that unless you're fighting Elektra, the fist cannot be blocked and cannot be dodged. Like the fist always hits unless you're Elektra, and then you can block it and dodge it so that you can blow up the wall, right? And that's a magic door that nobody can get through.
Just to paraphrase badly a quote from Joe Brannigan, my cousin Melody's husband, hey Joe, who I think is a listener. It's not really Iron Fist in this is sort of it's not a weapon as much as it is a narrative device.
Yes, exactly. Yes, yeah. In game terms, because I think a lot in role-playing game terms, it's not just a big bonus damage. Because a big bonus damage attack can still miss or be blocked or all kinds of other things, but that never happens with the fist.
It's kind of like Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber fighting ability. It's as good or as bad as it needs to be to advance the plot.
Yes, yeah. Or in this case, it's the ultimate trump card until you meet that scene where she's lured you down here just so that she can get you to break the wall. By the way, did anybody else think it was weird that we were after dragon bones this whole time?
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was looking at for a minute. Like the camera kind of pans up and we see all of these things, and I'm like, what the hell is that?
I kind of like the bit about the idea of mining dragon bones for. Yeah,
it was wild.
I'm totally on with that. Yeah.
It was fantastic, and I guess that in a literal sense, it was amazing, and I liked that about it, that it was something nobody would have predicted. But the substance is dragon bones.
I had to stop and rewind, make sure what I was looking at. Because at first I was kind of like you. I was like, what? And then, second and third watching, I was like, okay, that's what it is. But yeah, it was that was unexpected.
So
okay, Jim, go ahead.
Okay, so my biggest beef with Iron Fist.
Yes.
among all of the other beef. Like I have like a butcher's shop of beef with Iron Fist.
Everybody does, man.
And I'm in a lot of, I'm in a good company, I guess. Was they kept teasing the dragon. They kept teasing Shao Lao the Undying.
Yes.
And it was the only thing I really wanted, because his story, like in the comics, his story starts with him punching a dragon.
Yeah.
Like that's the beginning of his narrative.
Not just punching it, bear hugging it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's where the tattoo comes from. He like grabs the dragon and burns the tattoo into his chest.
Yeah. And when they showed us what the substance was, I was a little disappointed, because I'm like, I stopped watching the episode and I walked into the living room, and Misty watched every episode of Iron Fist with me.
Yeah.
My girlfriend. And she, I'm going to go back and rewatch Defenders with her, but I had to do it on the schedule for this podcast. And I walked in the room and she said, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "They're teasing the dragon again. We just saw the bones. I'm never going to see this stupid dragon actualize in this TV show." For me, when I was thinking what the door was going to unlock is there was a Heroes for Hire run in the mid-90s.
Okay.
Where, do you guys remember the Onslaught crossover?
Yeah.
So Onslaught kills the Marvel Universe, and Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee get to take them over and do the whole parallel universe story, Heroes Reborn. Well, the heroes that weren't drafted into the partnership, they all stayed behind. So Spider-Man's left behind with no Avengers, and that's where we get the Thunderbolts.
Yep.
Well, Heroes for Hire was relaunched during this time, and Iron Fist comes up with this crazy idea to make himself the anchor for Kunlun being actualized on New York. Like, so that the people of Kunlun would come into all reality, and they would become the heroes that we need. And it was this crazy far-out plan, but it was ultimately a plan killing him. And he couldn't tell anyone on the team, especially Luke Cage, because he had done something impulsive. And he was beginning to regret it, because now he's brought together a team, and there's still heroes in the world. And I thought it would be something like that, where New York would be wiped out, but Kunlun would be in its place. And then it's just mining dragon bones, which is a cool idea. But I was like,
that was kind of the shogun, right? The red herring was that they were going to open a door to Kunlun.
mm-hmm.
That's what I thought it was going to be for 7 episodes until we saw the dragon bones. I thought, okay, it's a door to Kunlun, and they're trying to get back there. But it turns out to be dragon bones instead. I want to just note that I like Danny Rand in this show. Like I like watching him. I like the character. I like the actor. And I felt kind of sorry for the character, because he spends like 2 episodes tied up. And I thought, geez, that's a player who's pissed at his DM. That's for sure.
No, he just wasn't there that week.
Do you think was that it?
He was in NPC mode. Yeah. Okay. NPC mode. Yeah.
Well,
I would agree with you. There was a lot of conversation with Luke Cage, and I figured he must have been there.
Yeah, he was tied up for an episode. But I do agree that removing him from the board outright was a little iffy. But I was watching all these shows as they were coming out. I'm still working on Luke Cage, but I was watching all these shows coming out, and I just kept thinking, Iron Fist is coming. Like, Iron Fist is the polar opposite of all of these damaged, broken people. He's slightly happy, well-adjusted. Like, he's going to be the calming influence in this room of people who are angry and upset. Now, that was inherited by Luke Cage.
Boy, were you disappointed.
And then I was just like, who is this guy?
Yeah, that was pretty far off.
Yeah, that was so far off from the show that we got. And I'm just like, now this show, I think, handled Danny Rand much better.
Yes,
so much so that I was a little disappointed that he wasn't dressed up in the Daredevil costume at the very end of the episode, lighting up his fist. Because that's an Ed Brubaker story. And I thought that'd be a nice little, like, if Daredevil started with Danny Rand running around as Daredevil, I think it would be hilarious.
That would be an interesting story.
Yeah.
I have not read that Brubaker story. Iron Fist becomes Daredevil?
So Matt Murdock's identity is exposed by Bendis, right?
Right.
So Bendis ends his run with Murdock going to prison.
Yes. I remember
and so the very full story arc is him in prison. Well, the only way to put probable, the shadow of doubt in people's mind is to have Daredevil active. So Danny Rand dresses up as Daredevil, and he's doing all the Daredevil stuff.
Wow.
But he's trying to ape Matt Murdock's fighting style, and he's losing himself in this costume. And this is before Ed Brubaker takes on Iron Fist in his own book.
Yes.
The best part of that comic book is one page, and it's the Punisher, and it's a silent sequence. I'm not a giant Punisher fan, but it's the Punisher in a diner. He reads that Matt Murdock's in prison. He sets down the newspaper. He looks across the diner, and across the street are a couple cops. He gets up quietly, walks over to the cops, and goes, "I'm Frank Castle. I'm the Punisher. Arrest me." And the cops are like, "What?" And so they arrest him, and they throw him. And so the Punisher gets thrown into jail with Matt Murdock to help keep him alive.
Oh, wow. That's nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, the Punisher and Daredevil have that great relationship in the comics.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that 2-issue sequence where it's the same story told from Daredevil's point of view and then Punisher's point of view. Remember, John Romita Jr. did the art on, I think, the Daredevil sequence.
Yeah, that was a great comic. Good stuff. Can we talk about the best scene in the whole series, as far as I'm concerned?
Sure.
The part where Luke Cage was yelling at Danny Rand in episode 2 or 3, because
I love that part.
Yeah.
So Jason knows that I'm a giant softie.
Yes.
So like my favorite bit in Rocky is, the date sequence where he's running across the ice because he can't ice skate. Like I'm totally, like, I don't want to admit this, but I'm admitting it. So I'm totally just like, give me something that has some heart and has feeling to it and feels genuine to me in these fantastic stories.
Yeah.
So when it came to Jessica Jones, the little girl, and Matt Murdock, and she starts talking about her friend's dad,
Who's a boxer.
who's a boxer, and Matt realizes it, and then he just has to silently act while she's extolling, like, sort of recapping his life. I know that the bigger picture was we have to establish that Jessica Jones is a detective, or reestablishing this as an idea for her character. But allowing the insight and that being the bond of trust, that she would go to the wall and then play it together in sort of the correct sequence that reflected Matt Murdock's life, I thought was well written, well acted, and I didn't think I was going to get that sort of halt in this show. I thought it was going to be a little bit more bombast, and maybe the character stuff would go by the wayside.
When the writers felt obliged to pair up Luke and Danny for several scenes, and that left Jessica and Matt to kind of also pair up in their walk around town scenes. And those could have been really boring scenes. They could have felt forced. But I thought the writers really rose to the occasion, and they found a way for those two characters to interact in an interesting way.
I actually found their interactions more compelling than Danny and Luke's.
I agree.
And it's something new because it's not something really explored in the comics. Yes, Jessica is, he is Jessica's lawyer, and that does sort of interplay happen. But really fleshing it out feels like new territory, as opposed to Luke and Danny feels more like, we're setting the groundwork for a potential buddy cop TV show.
So speaking of setting up things, we have to know when Misty gets her arm chopped off.
Oh, I love that.
Right? Now, if you've watched Iron Fist, you remember, watch Luke Cage. There's this scene at the end of Luke Cage when Misty gets an arm wound.
I'd forgotten that.
And they're faking you out because they're making you think, oh, this is it. She has to like lose her arm. But it turns out, no, it's like not even a big deal. She's like, I've had worse. And she just keeps going. And we thought, oh, okay, so they're going to fake us out. And then here she gets her arm entirely chopped off by not Bakuto, but the other guy.
Yeah.
You can tell how much I cared about the hand because I can't even remember the guy's name.
Right.
Let's just call him Bob.
Okay, Bob.
So Hand Agent Bob.
He's got his swords out there and he's getting ready to chop off whose head?
The Night Nurse.
Who was it?
The Night Nurse.
Claire. Claire. Yeah, he was after Claire and Colleen. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he's gonna chop Claire's head off, and Misty pushes her out of the way and loses her arm in the process. And you're like, holy shit, there's her new arm. There's her cyber arm. So by the way, the first still of Misty with cyber arm was released today. So that was very cool.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to her getting her cyber arm. Hey, Walter Billiard is helping his wife recover from surgery, but he is chatting with us. He had a comment about, I think we covered this, but it's kind of funny. Can we talk about the elephant in the room, how a guy who defeated Shao Lao the Undying and became the Iron Fist from civilization disciplined fighters is constantly acting like a little bitch?
Yeah.
Walt and I talked about this last episode, and we probably should have had him on, but he's telecommuting in. But the writing was kind of uneven. A lot of the characters, and it's not just Danny, it's a lot of the characters in this show, seem to kind of go back and forth. Like they express kind of contradictory views on very basic topics. The first time we see Karen, and she's talking to Matt, she actually doesn't sound very down on Daredevil at all. She's talking about how the city's a better place because Daredevil was there. But the next time we see her, and for the rest of the show, she's like, "Oh, I don't want anything to do with Daredevil, and he's the worst thing that ever happened to me." You know. And Iron Fist goes back and forth between this: "I have to do it by myself. This is my fight." The line that's on his character sheet that he keeps tagging is, "This is my fight."
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's like, "Hey, look at everybody around the table. This is kind of cool. We're going to be a team." So.
Right. He's a unifier or divider depending on what they need for that scene.
Yeah, and the seams really showed on that. The writers were like, well, we need to create tension so somebody's going to not agree with things.
Yeah.
Or we need somebody else is creating tension because you've got Jessica Jones who's like, no way. Matt, who's like still wearing a scarf at this point. And so somebody's got to actually want the team to happen. Let's give it to Danny.
Right.
Yeah, it was kind of.
Yeah, no, that felt a lot of that felt a little forced. Yeah. To answer Walt's question about like how he can do all these things to get to where he is and then not function as a human being, not very terribly well. In my headcanon is that he cheated somehow.
Oh,
and that's how he got his superpowers.
You're so mean.
Yeah, no, he's a cheater.
I think of it
plagiarized and killed the dragon by copying somebody else's solution, or I don't know.
I really think that it's just a matter of he was incredibly trained to do one thing. You know, that he was trained to do one thing his whole life, which is fight this dragon and become everything.
Yeah.
He doesn't know how to do anything else. He doesn't know how to interact with people that aren't monks. You know?
Yep.
I love how the other characters are so impressed by everybody else on the team.
Yeah.
There was a lot of like mutual appreciation society going on, which I liked, and I
did. Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of classic Justice League kind of like, oh, you can do that thing. That's awesome.
And watching Daredevil and Iron Fist fight, even though the pretext for that fight was pretty thin, was a great fight.
Yeah.
And Daredevil's clearly like the best fighter on the team, and everyone's like, we can't do this without Daredevil. So that was cool. I like that. I read an interesting thing today. We found out Netflix released some data. The very first show that most people watch is actually not Daredevil. It's Jessica Jones.
Oh, wow.
That's the entry show for the Netflix Marvel Universe.
Wow.
I can kind of understand that, just given the villain, Purple Man. Very popular. David Tennant. He's a very popular guy. Yeah.
What they revealed. Go ahead, Jim.
It's a more universal, like TV is still dominated. Like I know we revel in these geek sort of zeitgeists that are going on, but TV is still dominated by cop dramas and detective stories. And fundamentally, Jessica Jones is a detective story.
Yes. And
it's presented as, she's a detective, but she's at the very end of society, in the gutter, and that's very easy for a modern day audience who wants to binge watch something to enter into this world of crazy superheroes.
Well, also, I think the most obvious reason is that it's a female lead. What Netflix told us was that people that come to Jessica Jones come from watching other female protagonist shows, like Orange is the New Black or whatever.
Gotcha.
And if you think about it, it's just a simple matter of odds. Like if you're a guy looking for a guy show,
there's so many of them.
You've got 3 choices, right? You got Luke and Danny and Matt. But if you're a woman looking for an action show, you got 1 pick.
For the last 25 years or so, your most reliable TV audience has been women in the 20 to 45 cohort.
That's right. Yeah. And Jessica Jones really hit home with those people. And when we get to Jessica Jones on this podcast, I've got a lot of really amazing, smart women who have strong opinions about this show. So I have them on.
I will say that there's a whole other reason why Jessica Jones might have been an entry point so frequently. I think it's clearly one of the 2 stronger of the seasons they've had in the Netflix franchise overall. And personally, I would rate it. It's my favorite season.
Yeah.
Jessica Jones season 1 is my favorite season of all the Netflix ones.
Well, the first season of Daredevil is still top for me.
Yeah, that's really close. That's really good.
You're right. They're both really good.
Yeah.
It was very interesting. The people that watch Jessica Jones normally go to Daredevil next, and vice versa. If you watch Daredevil, the next one you go to is Jessica. But if you watch Iron Fist or Luke Cage, if you watch Luke Cage, you go to Iron Fist, and if you watch Iron Fist, you go to Luke Cage. This surprised Netflix because they expected more connection between Jones and Luke. Right? Because of the relationship in Jessica's show.
Right. Yeah.
But audiences are not following Luke. They don't watch Luke and Jessica Jones and then go to Luke Cage's show. They watch Jessica Jones and then go watch Daredevil. Yeah.
I actually thought that going from Jessica Jones to Luke Cage made a really good transition.
It did.
Yeah, even though the styles and the colors and everything are very different. I thought that worked really well. And
I know that there's a lot of Luke, Jessica fans in the audience. Jim, are you one?
I'm like, I know why they exist. I'm not really like, I'm not high on Bendez.
Yeah.
And I didn't particularly like Alias. I thought Alias, the false couple story arcs was really solid. And then they did the Jessica Jones origin story, and it was Marvel 616 fan fiction. And I could never get over that.
I have not read a lot of Jessica Jones comics, and although I love Luke Cage, my memories of him are mostly from the original Heroes for Hire run, right? And so I liked it when the show does things that are not in the comics. I thought the pairing up between Luke and Claire, for example, was very natural in the show, and I liked it. I was very happy with it. And so the fact that he moved on from Jessica, and that scene at the end of Defenders when they had that bar scene, and she's like, maybe we could have coffee sometime, and he just gives her the cold stare. Because we all know that by now that having coffee is a synonym in Defenders for having sex.
Right.
And he's like, but he didn't say no. He just walked away.
Yeah.
I kind of like Luke with Claire. I mean, they kept kind of teasing how this thing with Jessica's going to happen, but I thought that Claire was an awfully good partner for him. So
she's such a great character.
I do. Okay, I will say this. What was that?
I think they've done a good job with Claire.
Yes.
I've liked her character a lot.
I remember in Iron Fist when Colleen tries to teach Claire how to fight, and she uses cat claws or something. There was
none of that this time.
I was glad because I didn't want her to suddenly becomes like Super Claire, right? She's still cowering from bad guys and hitting people with pipes, and I'm like, that's
Go ahead, Jim. The best thing about the Jessica Jones Luke Cage relationship to me is that it's made Luke Cage a dad. So it's a superhero father figure trying to balance. Okay, what is he gonna do? Like, how is he gonna decide? Like, Marvel Civil War, the Civil War 1 is what they're calling it now. Mark Millar's giant. Is this an adult show?
I think so. I've already said crap at least, if not worse.
Giant clusterfuck of a comic book. The best thing about it was like the New Avengers Luke Cage decision to what is he going to do for his child? What is he going to do? Like, what's the world that he wants his daughter to live in? And I find that extraordinarily compelling. Not the least of which because I am in the dad role now. but I think it's interesting to show I think it's good, in popular culture to show a positive African American father figure.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
There's a Bill Cosby joke to make here that I just don't have the balls to. So
Okay.
I'm reading my camera right now.
yeah. Well, guys, we've been talking for about an hour, so we're getting to that point where we'll wrap things up. Closing thoughts? Anybody? Graham, what do you think?
I'm still eager to watch the next thing that Netflix throws at us for the Marvel franchise. They haven't lost me yet. Iron Fist, clearly it's weakest of the installments, but Defenders was stronger than I feared it would be, and even though I had some quibbles with some of the things at the end, they haven't lost me yet.
All right. What is next for Netflix? Is it Punisher?
Punisher, yeah. Looking forward to that.
13 episodes of Frank Castle shooting dudes.
You sound so excited.
I confess I have almost no interest in it because I mean the talent is really good.
Yeah.
But I'm not into the gun culture. Like gun culture is like something I personally am not turned on by. But the acting talent is amazing and I will watch it. And I'm fairly convinced the show will woo me over. But I really wanted to say something about vigilante activity, and I don't want it to be approving. I don't know if they can do that. I don't know if they have it in them to have a character that does not win the approval of the writers.
So, do we know what kind of cameos and crossovers we're going to get in the Punisher series?
We know Karen Page is in it.
Well, that's kind of given, I guess.
We've seen her in set pictures.
I saw article, like one of those rumor mill, take it with 20 pounds of salt kind of articles that tease a potential Moon Knight connection.
No way.
And that has me interested because I love Mark Spector, and I think that'd be really
I hope they do the Warren Ellis Moon Knight.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah, the kind of trippy 1970s supernatural detective thing.
Just putting him in the all white outfit, like like a white suit, basically, a white fedora. I just thought that was amazing.
It stops him from being reverse image Batman, which is a good idea. Hey guys, I just posted a link in the chat that Walt sent to me. This is a link to an image on comicbook.com of Misty's cyberarm from a Luke Cage season 2 picture.
Yeah, good. And that's filming Luke Cage 2, and Jessica Jones is filming. We know that that's filming because Purple Man comes back apparently in basically the Purple Man is in her head, like kind of haunting her.
Well, I mean, he's kind of her entire rogues gallery, not to be cheeky, so I would sort of expect him to come back in some form.
But honestly, you know what I'm looking forward to? When they set up Born Again. You remember who the last villain is in Born Again?
That's actually one I haven't read in the comics, so spoiler tag, who is the last villain?
It's Duke from Jessica Jones.
Oh, okay.
The guy who turns out to be like Patsy Walker's boyfriend and becomes a stalker. And then it's ultimately revealed to be a guy who's like super hyped up on drugs, and he takes like the red and the white and the blue pills. Okay. That character in the comics is named Nuke, and that character was invented in the Born Again story.
Now, I think, all right, this is armchair quarterbacking.
Okay, all right.
Now, the characters didn't have the same first name. So they had the same last name, but the first names were different.
Okay.
From the comics and the show. So I imagine if they did All Out Nuke, it would be like his older brother or some such. Because you have to connect it to the military pro-America thing. And I don't see that as part of the comp.
They don't. Because the only reason why Nuke they brought in the Super America thing is that they could have the contrast with Captain America. And there is no way we're getting Chris Evans to show up in Daredevil.
That's true.
Right?
That's unfortunate, but that's true.
That would be awesome, but there's no way they're going to do that. So
the best part about that comic was the caption where Captain America speaks to Thor and commands a god. I mean, that's the best middle line ever.
That scene in the same comic when Captain America is explaining to Daredevil why he's coming after Nuke, and he says he's wearing my colors. And Daredevil says, I hadn't noticed. Because, of course, he hates the color.
That is a great line, too.
Anyway, so I like the show, too. I like Daredevil. I mean, Defenders, I was totally in on it. I think I binge-watched the whole thing in basically 2 sessions.
So least likely cameo for Punisher is probably Chris Christopherson as Whistler, right?
What?
We're talking about likely cameos. I was thinking least likely cameo is Chris Christopherson as Whistler from the long departed Blade franchise.
Apparently, one of the shots we have of Punisher has him with some sort of like skull armor plate on his chest.
It had to happen. I mean,
it does not look good. It looks like a metal like boob suit. It's really bad.
Most of the costumes and stills don't translate.
Yeah.
Like most of those Captain America costumes, when they show a picture, my very first reaction is, that's not my Cap. And then the movie woos me over because those motion and those other things that make it palatable.
I mean, if we had a press pack for Luke Cage season 1, we can find a still that has Luke Cage wearing the headband and the yellow pirate shirt and the whole thing.
Yeah.
Taken out of context, you're like, oh dear God, what has happened?
Well, he says, and there's a lot. Gray, you were talking about this earlier. Like, there's a lot of making fun of heroic tropes in the show.
Yeah, and making fun of the ones that haven't lasted, haven't held up.
And I get that, but I also find it a little tedious. Like, it's gotten to the point where every character has to say, "I'm not a hero" in order to be a hero. Like,
yeah, that is a trope. Yeah,
and I'm disappointed with that. And so the characters have to make fun of the costume all the time. And what I like about this one is that like Iron Fist likes the costume. Danny's clearly into Daredevil's costume, right? He's like, that's so cool. And Jessica has to give him shit for it, right? Nice.
Well, because that's totally consistent with Jessica, though.
It is. It totally is.
He didn't do that.
And when somebody else said the same insult to Daredevil in his own show, like, I think it was Foggy, like said something about how nice ears or whatever. And so when Matt says they're horns, he's repeating his own defense. It's like he's used to saying.
Yeah.
So, Jim, any closing thoughts before we wrap it up?
I don't think it was the best Netflix show. I'm sort of in the Jason camp. Well, season 1 of Daredevil blew me away in the sense of how well paced and well structured it was. I do think that the Netflix shows suffer from killing off Ben York in season 1 of Daredevil.
Yeah.
I don't think they've quite recovered that tone.
This is one of the things I want to talk to you about, Gray, because you have experience as a journalist.
Yeah.
And so when we get to presentations of journalism in the show, I want to see what you think. But I totally agree with you, Jim. And in fact, the writers admitted that if they had known they were getting Spider-Man back in the Marvel Universe, they wouldn't have killed Ben Urich.
Yeah. I get why it had emotional resonance and didn't feel like a cheap kill in season 1. But man, there was a whole genre that he brought to the show that is now tragically missing because I keep hoping that they'll do more with Karen Page to bring in that kind of investigative journalist genre, and they never really fully deliver there.
No.
And she's there mostly to be the worrying quasi girlfriend and I keep thinking it would be really awesome if she really got into the Ben role.
I mean, how great would it have been if the full episodes was Ben York trying to get people to talk to him and to, you should be talking to this guy. And I know that Claire sort of fills that void, but I don't know. I just sort of love the fact of an everyman in this universe of glowing fist and hyper senses and unbreakable skin and whatever the heck Jessica's got going on. I just sort of miss that voice.
Yeah. Jason, closing thoughts?
Oh, shoot. I've done nothing but talk all hour. I'm done.
Okay, all right. Well, hey, folks, thanks for tuning in to our episode, second episode of the Hallway Fights podcast, and we'll be coming back to you next week. I think next week or week out, whenever we get it scheduled, we're talking about Daredevil season 1, right?
Yeah, and I've got some more new guests to come in. People who have Gray. I want to get you to come back and talk about Yorick. And we've got a couple of other new voices, people who have written or talked about Daredevil before. So yeah, eager to have them. And I think, well, we've got a long guest list already, which is great.
We got Sheila Balfe.
No.
I'm working a long con on him, telling him I'm one of Michael Bay's assistants, and we'll talk about the next Transformers movie, and so it'll be like a little bit of X Factor when we get on. I'm lying. It's not. It's gonna happen. So. Graham is so unamused. He's just looking at me like a disappointed professor.
I was laughing.
Oh, okay, good. It's a bad video connection. So, all right, folks, thanks for tuning in. We will catch you next time on the Hallway Fights podcast. And check us out on the Banff podcast. You can find us on iTunes and on YouTube, and coming soon to the scent section of Walmart. So thank you very much. We'll catch you next time. Bye.